Ask and ye shall receive, because here I am with another Snow White comparison video, except this time it's Evil Queen's edition. In my last video, I did a dress-by-dress and point-to-point comparison using 4 different categories for the Snow White costumes in the 2025 Disney remake and the 2012 adaptation Mirror Mirror. I compared the work of 2 designers, Aiko Ishioka for Mirror Mirror and Sandy Powell for Disney's Snow White. I used 4 categories for the comparison: color, materials, character, and research. And since the Snow White characters had equal amounts of looks throughout both films, I was able to compare them on a one-to-one basis, since that won't really be possible for the Evil Queens because they have not only a different amount of costumes, but the Evil Queen in Mirror Mirror has a excessive amount of costuming going on. It's a lot. And honestly, so does the Evil Queen in the Snow White 2025. They are both a lot, as they should be. But I don't think the same system is going to work. So I will instead be going through each of our 4 categories and ranking the collective look of all our Evil Queens. So each category will have a possible 5 points for a total of 20. And we will tally them up at the end to see who is the true Evil Queen. Without further ado, let's jump right in. For color, the 2025 Evil Queen starts the film off in these cool tones when she first arrives at the kingdom, and she spends the remainder of the film largely dressed in black, with accents of cool colors, occasionally interrupted by this warmer tone of purple and red kind of thing? I don't know. I really enjoyed the solid colors of her early outfits being all green because it added this sense of simplicity that I think was super important to her deception of the king. I wish that this had swung really hard in the opposite direction as she revealed her most evil self. I think that it would be really cool that if instead of all black with accents of color, we instead saw huge explosions of color all packed together to really drive home the greed and opulence of this character. Instead, we are treated to almost exclusively black outfits. Yay. With a little bit of color given in the use of jewelry, and though I do have to give a shout out to this particular look here, which is like this shifting blue to purple to black thing that I really did enjoy. I think that the play on the original Disney outfit in the musical number, All Is Fair, is the closest we got to the colorful looks that I wish we had had from the beginning. Overall, it's not bad, but there's plenty of room for improvement here, so I will give color for the Evil Queen 2025 a 3 out of 5 points. For the 2012 Mirror Mirror Evil Queen's color, it's largely a warm color scheme with peaches, reds, and golds, and as I said in my previous Snow White, this movie tends to have Snow White be associated with the color blue, so the Queen being the antithesis of this works very well with her warm color tones. Also, though it may be an obvious form of color symbolism, her wearing warm tones, and especially these gold-like fabrics, does symbolize her greed. If I did have something to say about the outfits that lean towards the gold tones, I would have loved to see some metallic embroidery and embellishments on these, as I think it would have really driven the point home. Otherwise, I am very happy with her color throughout the film, especially her selfish use of red during the ball scene to make herself stand out, and I definitely want to shout out the only cool-toned look of hers in the film, which comes up when she is attempting to woo the prince. I think this works really well as she's trying to lean into a softer and more alluring personality, and so she leaves behind her usual color scheme. Overall, very good with just that one note on the gold, so I will give this a 4 out of 5. Next up, materials. For the 2025 film, to say I was disappointed with the materials would be such an understatement. Because, it's bad. It's really bad. The first green look that we see the Queen wearing isn't terrible, it just doesn't have much weight or structure to it, and so it wrinkles in a way that's just really distracting. But then we get into the black looks. And it all starts coming apart. I don't mind the velvet, but the velvet is just not structured at all or fitted to her body, and it just kind of looks like she's wearing like a velvet tube sock of a dress. So it then just loses all its impact as a material. The sort of veil wimple that she wears, I would have much prefer something a little looser and more sheer. If we're going to make it that tight, then I'd like a material with a little more substance or body to it, rather than having it look like a flex tape commercial or that one Unis Honest video where they vacuum packed Ethan into a trash bag, because that's what this headdress is giving. Incorporating Unis Honest into my costume review videos was not on my bingo card for this year, but, you know, what happens, happens. Of course, the jewels, while I think that they look like plastic junk, could easily have been fixed by making the surrounding metallics pop a little bit more, and I think it was the fault of the metallics more than the actual jewels themselves. And also the insane amount of sequins and reflective materials that were all over her clothes definitely pulled away from the fantastical vibes that could have been there with these costumes. I think that, especially in my mind, sequins have such an attachment to like cheap costuming, as well as those like discount pillow things where you swipe your hand across it and it shows a picture. You know the ones. We all know those pillows. We've all played with those pillows in a Target and begged our mom to get us one. And yes, sequins can look fantastic, as we've seen in vintage couture and also recent runway looks, but in the context of a fairy tale, I don't think that they're working. Overall, for materials, I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 5. I was really disappointed. Insofar as materials for Mirror Mirror, the Evil Queen largely wears silks, and I am most impressed by the amount of accessorizing on these silks. There are frills and ruffs and embroidery and sheer collars and cuffs, and I think that's truly where the genius lies in the materials of these costumes. The devil is definitely in the details here. Each look is accompanied by elaborate decoration, whether that be through intense pleating or the 2 billion little petals on that insane wedding dress, or a bit of sparkle. Everything works so well together and gives a very cohesive, expensive, and luxurious look to each of these costumes. I would not change a thing, so 5 out of 5. Our third category is character. The 2025 Evil Queen doesn't have an intense character arc, and she is just very run-of-the-mill villain. So there is a very small arc that we can see in her going from pretending to be a nice, alluring woman for the king to her being her fullest, evilest self, which was handled well in the transition of these lighter and more solid early looks before she changes into the all-black looks with her colorful jewels. Her all-black looks with the jewels, it does scream villain, you know? It screams villain. It says, hello, I'm a villain. But I don't think that it takes it far enough. Sandy Powell talked about wanting to use styles from both the medieval period and the 1930s to exaggerate Gal Gadot's height and use sharp lines to draw out the Evil Queen's harsh nature. But I don't think this was achieved, because there aren't a lot of sharp lines or dramatic cuts or flavor in any of the looks that we see. She is in desperate need of some flair. And I know that Sandy Powell is capable of this, since she did exactly this with the evil stepmother in the 2015 Cinderella. Sharp lines, lots of flair, dramatic silhouettes, mixing historical styles with references to old Hollywood. I do also think that all of the use of jewelry as a physical manifestation of the Queen's greed could have been taken so much further with more complex designs, or if you really wanted to lean into this like art deco thing that the Evil Queen has going, then you can still get complex and you can still stay in a style. The closest we came to this was during the All Is Fair sequence, and I think that if that energy had been brought into the rest of the movie, the designs would have been a lot more successful. Overall, the character came through, but it just didn't pack as much of a punch as I think it could have, so I'm going to rate this a 2 out of 5. The Evil Queen in Mirror Mirror doesn't have much of a character arc, much like the Evil Queen in the 2025, but her costumes do ooze character, as they say perfectly who this person is. She is vain and opulent and greedy. When she dresses big and bold. Even a costume that could be simple, like her nightgown, is overinflated to the point of looking a little ridiculous. She's greedy and she longs to be the center of attention, as we can see in her red peacock dress, where she purposefully makes everyone else adhere to a dress code so that she can be the star of the show. She may not be decked out in jewels, but nonetheless, she just has an expensive vibe. I wouldn't change a thing about this, and I'll give it a 5 out of 5. And our last category is research. For the 2025 Disney film, Sandy Powell specifically references the 1930s Old Hollywood aesthetic and the medieval period for the Evil Queen's costumes in the 2025 film. Starting at the head, you can see the medieval influence come through with the suggestion of a veil and wimple, but in this film, it's instead vacuum-packed onto the actress's face. Lovely. The jewelry is both hit and miss, because some things, like this, have absolutely no basis in 1930s or medieval references. It's actually kind of giving me like chunky 80s glam. And other pieces like this are startlingly similar to late medieval and Renaissance jewelry styles. I think that the late medieval and early Renaissance jewelry is really gorgeous and a stunning example of how chunkier metal work in jewelry can be really beautiful. And so I was definitely disappointed to not see more of that in this film and just instead see giant blocks of gemstones everywhere. In the body and sleeves of the gowns she wears, there is obvious medieval references with the long flowing sleeves, as long as the ones that cut off at the elbow taper into the forearm and have these big trains behind them, as well as more fitted body leading into more flounced skirts. The glamorous, curvy Hollywood silhouette of the 1930s matches up with this pretty well, and I would definitely call this an attempt, but not a successful adaptation of either medieval or 1930s, since I don't see the dress offering much shape to the body at all. And while the chunky shapes and harsh lines in the Evil Queen's costumes might be references to Art Deco, like in her crown, which I am definitely not a fan of. It looks like dirty plastic stained glass, and the impression that it gives leans further into like a kitschy look of the 70s and 80s rather than something more elegant and Art Deco like the 20s and 30s. Once again, I think that All Is Fair is definitely the closest that Sandy got to this, especially with the little jewelry piece in the front. Definitely not that cape thing though. I don't approve of that at all, but the jewelry at the neck is pretty close to what I would want the rest of the jewelry to follow along if we were going for Art Deco. Overall, I can see the references that Sandy Powell was pulling from in the costumes, but I don't think that they were executed successfully, and I do not think that they lend themselves to the overall aesthetic of the character if they are not going to be pushed to the limits. An over-the-top character deserves over-the-top costumes, so I'm going to rate this a 2 out of 5. The Evil Queen in Mirror Mirror, as per the designer Aiko Ishioka's direction, pulls from many centuries of fashion all at once. There are clear references to the Elizabethan period, as well as later in the 18th century. There are no shortage of references to the Victorian era, of course, with basque waists, larger-than-life skirts. The Queen lacks accessories like jewelry, but instead the costumes say it all for her. I especially enjoy this yellow gold dress that she wears that's very Elizabethan in nature when worn with the matching ruff, but when the ruff comes off, it's transformed into this very 1880s bodice shape. The focus is on large and dramatic shapes, with the details borrowing techniques and styles from all over the previous 5 centuries. From slash and puff sleeves, to partlets, to robe a la polonaise. This approach is consistent through all the costumes in the film, and I think the blend of periods and styles immerses the viewer into the fantasy of it all, seeing as most of these styles did not exist within 10 years of each other, much less in the same outfit. Overall, I think the combining of multiple styles and periods further exaggerates them, and it really packs a punch in this film, and I'll give this section a 5 out of 5. Now that we've gone through all 4 of our categories, let's tally up the scores. The 2012 Snow White adaptation, Mirror Mirror, scored a total of 19 out of 20 points, or a 95%. The Disney adaptation of Snow White scored 8 out of 20 points, or a 40%. My clear winner is, once again, Mirror Mirror and the gorgeous work of Aiko Ishioka. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Sandy Powell is an amazing designer, and she is responsible for some of my favorite costumes of all time. But I believe that the Disney Snow White was one of her few failures, and I don't blame her. I blame the Disney Corporation's prioritization of marketable designs that they can make into merchandise and children's toys for the ultimate goal of milking this movie for as much money as possible, instead of trying to foster art and creativity. If you liked this video, please comment below your thoughts on the Disney Snow White remake or the 2012 Mirror Mirror's costumes. If you'd like to see more, please visit my channel for more videos like this and others where I actually make costumes. I'm on Instagram and TikTok for a little extra short content. And if you'd like to see some behind the scenes pics and you'd like to support the channel, be sure to go check out my Patreon. I've got some massive life changes coming up, which I'll update you on next time. But I'm doing my best to get this and my next video out on time. But I can't wait to see you all again, and I hope you have a good day or night or whenever you happen to be watching this. And bye! Oh, I definitely just burnt my tongue. Oh, does the AC have to kick on now? Must you be so loud? I either need to talk less in videos or talk more in real life because I'm losing my voice every time I do one of these. I don't think I'd ever get up in like a karaoke bar and sing, yet I regularly put bloopers of me singing between takes onto the internet where potentially thousands of people get to see it. To quote the great Rosetta of the Tinkerbell franchise, ironic, isn't it?